Hi everyone, I'm Gregory from Open Barbers and I'm going to make a short video on how to cut your own hair. So as you can see, my hair is long on the top, quite long because it's quite curly, and short on the sides, and it's disconnected or undercut in the sense that it's shaved up to a line and then suddenly long, so it's not blended into the top. I am planning on doing a slight fade from shorter at the bottom to longer at the top, so there will be a little bit of fading as part of this video, but if that's a style that you like for yourself or that you would do on another person, then hopefully this video will be helpful for you. So the first stage is preparation. So my first tip for preparation would be to wash your hair first, so that the sides of your hair, if they're short like this, can be as fluffy as they can be, because that will mean that the clippers will go through your hair nice and easily. If your hair is bedheady, it might be a bit stuck to your head and it might be difficult for the clippers to lift your hair away from your head, and it might result in a slightly more patchy finish. Equally, if you've got product in your hair, again, the clippers might find it difficult to go through your hair and it might leave an uneven result for next time you wash your hair. So that's my first tip. I have some equipment here. My camera person will hopefully show us what we have. So I've laid out my scissors and my comb. I've got my clippers with a half grade, a 1 grade and a 1.5 grade. And I've got my trimmers with a half grade, a 1 grade and a 1.5 grade. I've also got some clips. So it may be the case that you don't have that type of equipment at home. So what I'm planning on doing is predominantly doing everything with my clippers and not my trimmers, because a lot of the time people won't have like these little mini ones at home. So I'll try and show as much as I can just with the clippers. The trimmers are really useful for just going around the edges and also for getting a slightly more precise finish. The other things that I have are clips, but I can show you some alternatives to using clips if you don't have any at home. I do have these scissors that are designed more for professional hairdressers, which I don't imagine many people will have at home. I have done a sort of Skype-based haircut with somebody who used really chunky kitchen scissors and really tiny nail scissors, and those were the only scissors that they really had. But we made it work, and actually the results came out really well. So even though I'm using these, please don't be put off by that, because the techniques that I'm using are fairly simple to use with any kinds of scissors. Okay, you may also need to have access to electricity. I would really recommend that if you're not using professional clippers, but you're using ones from a supermarket or whatever, that you actually do keep them plugged in, even if they're battery powered, because sometimes those clippers lose quite a lot of power by just not having a power source, and then much less the blades will cut much more slowly, which may result in it pulling your hair and it hurting, or it just might result in it not cutting the hair so cleanly. So if you can bring in an extension lead and plug them in, I would still do that even if they're battery ones. And I think that might be it about preparation. You can see I've got my very own fetching gown. Again, you might not have one, but you might want to use a pillowcase or an old t-shirt, or just do it in the nude. I would be doing it in the nude, but I felt like maybe that wasn't so cool, or would result in some sort of content warning or something. Okay, so let's move on. Oh, I also have a mirror. My mirror is here. So the final piece of equipment that I have to hand is my mirror. However, my mirror is just there for the end of, or in the moment and at the end for checking. But it's a really important part of a DIY haircut, is that it's predominantly actually done more by feel and by finger vision rather than eye vision. And so I'm less concerned with, at the moment, like looking in the mirror and trying to see what I'm doing. And I'm much more going to tune in with how the clippers feel on my head, and trying to have a kind of physical memory of where the clippers have been on my head. And that's actually a much more effective way of getting a more even haircut in my experience, but that will become clearer as I go along. Okay, so I think we're ready to start. Let's go for step one, clippering the backs and the sides. Okay, so firstly I'm going to take my clippers, and I've made a decision that I'm going to clipper my hair from a half grade at the bottom through to a 1.5 grade at the top, and I'll have a 1 in the middle. So the grade 1 is going to be like this band in the middle, not as high as the top and not as close to my ears. So I like to start with that middle section and then fade up from there and fade down from there. Okay, so your clippers might not have those options. You might not have half grades. So that does make it a little bit more challenging. But another thing that you can make use of is if your clippers have a lever, you can create a half grade by creating a bit more space between the top and the bottom part of the blade. So if you pull the lever forward, it brings the blade closer together. If you pull it down, it brings the blades further apart from each other, and that does create a bit more space. So if you have a grade 1 clipped on there, that will now become a 1.5. So that's quite a useful thing to know. I sometimes have found that when you have the lever open and the blades are further apart, that it doesn't get as much of a clean cut. So that's just something else to bear in mind, but it's a useful thing to know. Okay, so now I'm going to make a start. My primary technique when I'm cutting my own hair is, instead of using my hand and shaving up and then bringing my hand round, I find that really difficult because there's a lot of motion and variation in my hand, especially because my shoulder doesn't go back very far. So what's much easier, I find, is to actually keep my hand just going up and down, but actually spinning my head. So I have much more control over the motion of my head, and then I'm much more likely to get an even line all the way around. I don't want to make a line exactly, but an even kind of level all the way around. And I can pretty much get all the way around to the back of my head without having to move my hand all that much. I might end up leaving a strip in the middle that I'd have to get back to later. The same thing on the other side, much more challenging with my left hand, but again, kind of moving my head rather than my hand. Okay, so let's see how I get on. I haven't done this for a while, it has to be said, so it might not be as good as it used to be, but let's see. Okay, my clippers are on. I'm holding my hair out of the way. I'm not using any clips. You could use water to hold it down, you could use a clip to hold it in place, but I just find it's most effective just pulling with some tension, and that way I'm not going to accidentally catch any of my hair with the clippers.
Now I'm going to try the other side.
Okay, made a start. So I'm trying, when I'm doing that, to really try and tune into where the clippers are on my head, and trying to sort of almost like have a muscle memory or a physical memory of where the clippers were, and I'm trying to match that up with the memory of where it was on this side of my head. So let's see if I can see in the mirror how that is. That's not too bad. It could possibly be a tiny bit higher on this side. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going over and over and over because if you go over it once, you just might miss quite a few bits. So you just have to keep on going over it and over it to make sure you get it even. Okay, that seems more symmetrical. So that's good. Okay. Now I'm going to switch my clipper guard over to a grade 1.5. Again, if you don't have one of those, you could keep the one on there, but pull the lever down and you'll have the same effect. So now I need to be quite careful that I don't go into the hair from the top of my head, but the more tension I pull on that, the less likely it is that I'm going to accidentally catch it. So I should be able to go over the top of it without clipping any of that hair by accident. Okay, so now I'm just trying to see whether or not I need to just get a little bit tighter, and this maybe is where it's useful to be able to see a little bit. So, excuse me, kitten. So again, I'm pulling it really tight and I'm just trying to make sure that I don't leave any little pokey bits in the top. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same on this side again. I have the added advantage of receding hairline. It's a real plus when it comes to this kind of hair thing because there's not as much hair to pull across, so that's great. Okay. Again, I'm twisting my head rather than my hand. Okay. As the hair was cascading down from my head, it was pouring like snow on this little kitten who thought it was Christmas, didn't you? Say hi, Bubble. Hi, Bubble. Oh. Okay. All right. So, obviously the back of my head is going to be completely shambles right now, but that's okay because I'm just working on the sides. So now I'm switching out from my half grade to, from my 1.5 grade down to my half grade, and I'm going to fade in to the one that we've already done. Don't need to worry as much about the top because we're not going to go that high, but I want to tune in to the feeling where the one was like this kind of a band. I want to like not go as high as that, so I want to tune into the feeling. I kind of want to be pulling the clippers out a little from about here. Okay. Oh yeah, I should have said that to get a nice clean finish in front of your ear, you just need to really give your ear a bit of a pull. And you'll catch those hairs that sometimes hide around the top of the ear. And the other side, you really need to pull your ear right down. Some people have very stiff ears and some people have bendy ears, so it depends on your ear. But kind of really try and scoop in there to get over the ear. Otherwise, it's the same principle. Okay, and the same on the other side. Pull my ear back, just get those hairs around the ear, and pull my ear over, and get under there, and then just go back into that movement. Okay, just checking in my mirror. It's not looking too bad. Probably needs a little bit of tidying up, but on the whole, it's not too bad. But let's just see what's happened to the back of my head. So the back undoubtedly hasn't really had much done yet. My hair design is lends itself well to home haircuts because it doesn't blend into the top. So again, the undercut goes all the way round at the back, and my crown is low enough that the hair ahead of my crown will flow forward, and the hair that would be below my crown would lie back. But I've shaved up as high as that, so I'm not having that situation where my hair springs backwards, and fortunately my crown doesn't do that. Whereas I know for some people, they will have bits of hair that will always want to ping backwards. So you might, if you're doing a haircut like this, you might want to consider how high you're going at the back, to either cut off that bit of springy bit or to just be mindful of how it might behave. Okay, so at the back, I have to now think a bit more carefully about my shoulders and maybe hold my clippers in a different way. So on the sides, I'm holding them like this, but on the back, I'm going to hold them like that. So on the sides, it's like that, but on the back, it's like that, so that I can get my arm over and just do the same thing, go side to side, and try and make sure that I get a nice even kind of band of grade across. Okay, so this is, I'm back to my grade 1, which was my middle section. Okay, now I'm switching to my 1.5. I'm going to hold that hair so I don't accidentally cut any of it. What I can also do is use my fingers to figure out where that part of my hair starts and help it to become a barrier to make sure the clippers don't go into it. Okay, and now I'm switching to my half grade, which is my lower part. Okay, so the back of my head has a funny nape whirl growth pattern, which means that these hairs grow up and these hairs grow down. So it creates that kind of like springing out of the neck. So what I need to do is turn my clippers upside down. So before I was doing this, now I'm going to do this and go down, shave downwards, so that it catches those hairs against the direction in which they grow. Okay, so I haven't got 2 mirrors, so hopefully the back looks fine.
It's really bad.
Is it?
No.
Okay, so what I can also do now, if I've done the majority of the shave, what I may feel is that it just needs a little bit of tweaking, and this is where the lever does come in to good use. Because I'm lucky enough to have clippers that have the half grades as well as the full size grades, if I pull the lever from a half down, it will become a grade 1. But if I just make it go just slightly less than full, then it will be just slightly less than a 1. So it will be somewhere between a half and a 1. And now I can use that to my advantage by just trying to see if there are any bits that get caught between the half and the one that just blend it in a little bit nicer. So I'm just going to go everything again, just really gently. It doesn't have to cut anything, it could just be a check. Okay, and I can do the same thing with my grade 1, clipping it on, but again pulling the lever so it's slightly more than a grade 1 but slightly less than a 1.5. And I'll just do that but slightly higher up. Okay, so hopefully that will have just caught any hairs that sort of sit somewhere between those two where there may have been a bit of a hard line created. That should hopefully have just softened any kind of line that's been created there. So I'm just going to feel it with my fingers and just see if it feels good, if I can feel any long bits that have been missed. See if I can kind of, if there's any long bits here that I can catch. It's probably not perfect, but I'll probably get away with it. Okay, I feel good about that. So now I'm going to use, this is where my little trimmers would come in handy, but I'm going to see how well I can do with my big clippers, because that's more likely what you'll have at home. So now what I'm trying to do, I always feel like a haircut feels so much neater and so much more finished when the edges have just been tidied up. They don't have to be like mega sharp, but sometimes when you get floofy bits in the neck, it can just feel unfinished. So what I'm going to do is aim just to use this corner. So I'm not aiming to hold them flat. I'm aiming to hold them at an angle so that I can get a nice curve shape around my ear. Again, involves pulling your ears around a bit, but that tension is quite useful because it kind of creates a bit more space. So I'm going to just figure out where my clippers are in relation to my ear before I go straight into cutting anything. And I'm going to flip them around the other way and go upwards from here. And now I'm going to use the flat edge of my clippers to create a nice line down there. I'm holding them further away from my hair to begin with, just so I can figure out where they actually are, and then move them into place. And I'm not seeing anything, but I can actually hear when I can feel that, when I can hear when they're connecting with hair. So I know that they're reaching the hairline there. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So again, I'm going just for the corners, pulling my ear outwards. Okay, and now, because as I was saying before, the hair on my neck grows upwards rather than downwards. If I try and use the clippers upwards, it might not get a very clean shave. So I'm going to turn them upside down and just go across the back of my neck. Okay, so now I've done my edges. It is slightly easier to do it with a smaller one, so if you have got beard trimmers or anything like that, you may find that easier. You also might find that they get slightly tighter because the bigger clippers might leave a slightly longer bit of bristle, and the little tiny trimmers might just take that down a fraction more so it lasts a little bit longer. There's nothing wrong with using the mirror. It's more just that the mirror, because it's the opposite, your hand is often going the opposite direction to what you think it's going. In some ways, you're kind of maybe more likely to make a mistake than if you do it by feel. But you can also just feel with your fingers whether you've got those little floofy bits or not. Okay, so I've done the shavy part of my haircut. So now I will move on to step 2. Actually, that was step 2. I'm going to move on to step 3. Doesn't make any difference. I'm going to cut the top of my hair. I don't want to cut loads off just because I don't want it to be much shorter than this, but I'm going to do it for the purposes of the demonstration. So, nice and clean hair, easy to sort of hold and manage and pull with tension. So what I'm doing is I'm planning on cutting off, it hasn't been cut for a while anyway, so I'm planning on cutting off maybe about that much, like a couple of centimetres. That's the aim. And again, I'm going to do it all by feel. I'm going to start at the back of my head, and I'm just going to pull the hair up, just a small section, and I'm going to try and get a sense of like where the end is. And I think if I hold the end between my thumb and finger, that's probably about the couple of centimetres that I wanted. Then I'll bring my scissors up. I'm not going to open them yet because I don't want to cut my fingers, and I can bump them against the ends of my fingers. Cat's getting involved. Okay, so that's the snip, the first snip. And I'm going to try and work my way fairly methodically across from one, whoops, don't do that, from one side to the other. The cat is going to be so covered in hair. Okay, now I'm working my way forward. You're lucky that if you have curly hair like I do, it's quite forgiving. So if it's not perfectly accurate, then the curls will probably conceal that. Whereas I think if you have very, very straight hair or very fine hair, this is quite a hard thing to do. You may decide that if your hair is on the straighter and finer side of things, that you almost try to be more haphazard to make it more textured all over. I can show you a technique for that as well. Okay, so I do have it shorter at the back and slightly longer at the front, so as I'm pulling up, I'm probably finding that the hair is longer as it gets further to the front. And my hair is not very abundant these days. Sadly, it's all gone down the plug hole. So I don't have as much hair to work through, whereas people who have very thick hair might be doing this for some time. I'm trying to tune into my scalp a bit for the sensation of what hair has already been pulled. So sometimes I have a memory of like if I'm pulling my hair, I'm like, oh yeah, that feels like that bit's been pulled already. So I kind of feel like I know where I am based on my sensations. Okay, I feel like I've more or less worked through it, but now I can just see if any bits feel like they've been missed. Just try and compare the symmetry. Okay, that's probably fine. But for anyone who is not wanting something so blunt on the ends because it will look chunky and choppy, here's another technique that you can try. So you take a bigger chunk of hair, twist it around, so it's like in a big twist, and then this is going to look super scary, but it's very effective. So you take your scissors and you basically chop in to the twist a little bit all the way up, and basically that takes out some of your hair, but it cuts it in a much more random way, so you're not basically having like different lengths in a chunky way, but you're more like having a variety of lengths in a slightly more layered or feathered way. So that means that for anyone who's got straighter hair or finer hair, that can be quite a useful technique to avoid kind of like a clumpy finish. If you happen to have some thinning scissors, these are the ones that have teeth missing, those type. These can also be super handy at hiding mistakes. So again, I would take a section of hair like that, twist it around, use my thinning scissors and just do the same thing, just chomp in. And it will take some of the hair, but not all of the hair, and it will cut it in a much more sort of random way, which means that things blend in a bit more easily. Thinning scissors and curls are generally not great friends, because curls can go a bit frizzy as a result of thinning scissors, so I tend not to use them very much on curly hair, but then if curly hair hides mistakes more easily, you don't need them so much. Okay, so I'm just going to check in the mirror, see how that feels. Yeah, obviously it's super floofy, but when I've washed it and put some product in it and stuff, then the curls should hopefully come back and feel quite happy, especially now that the ends have had a little trim. Okay. Well, that concludes my DIY, do-it-yourself, on-yourself haircut, and I hope you enjoyed this video. We just wanted to say thank you so much for listening, and if you need any assistance or support while attempting to cut your own hair, do feel free to email us on openbarbers@gmail.com, and we'll do all that we can to give you encouragement and support and confidence in doing your own hair. And we wish you all the best and good luck, and we say bye bye.